There it is. The tale of Ulezelski and the unicorn. Dedicated to my grandfathers, my great-grandfathers, and their fathers before them. Chapter 1. Ulezelski the Hunter. Once upon a time, in a kingdom not far, lived Count Karl Ulezelski III, the man with the uneven brow. He was a hunter by trade ever since he was a small child, a knee-high burden for his parents to bear. He ruled his lands with an even temper when the sun was out and brightly lit in his favor. And he ruled his lands with an iron fist when the moon was full and glowing in anger. When his two dogs, Bertha and Flossie, barked, most would cringe in fear. When they barked at him, he barked back, and they listened with attentive, obedient ears. He lived by an old credo passed down to him from one father to the next: either kill or be killed. That is the way the Ulezelskis have always lived. Now it was time for Ulezelski to teach his son Stefan the ways of a hunter, but it seemed the old ways were lost on him. He didn't have a brutish side trying to get out and scream at the world anymore, like his father did. So he went with his son deep into the woods to teach him all that he knows. But he was unable to get him to raise that bow and carry on the family credo. The two were returning home from that trip into the woods up the steep path along the mountainside to their kingdom that lay in the valley just on the other side. The wind was quite fierce that day. It blew in angry fury and heavy droplets of misty rain, clouding their sights whenever it felt the need to make them struggle. Silence was all that was between them since they left the woods, until his horse stopped walking. Ulezelski stepped out in front and yelled, "Just give it a good kick of the heel, and that old companion of mine should get moving." Stefan gave it a good kick, but it seemed that old horse of his wasn't moving without his father's stern heel planted firmly in his backside. Ulezelski slanted his eyes with anguishing distraught over this bothersome annoyance. "What's the holdup now? Just stick your heel in his side, like you really mean it. He won't bite." He then turned back around in a quiet, somber way. "Father, I'm trying the best I can, but your horse just won't budge for me," he replied as he raised his voice over the cold and chilly banter of the howling winds. Ulezelski lowered his uneven brow as he let out another disgruntled grunt towards his son's timid side. He then tugged on the reins tightly. The horse promptly met his request, and they started moving. The path had been fairly easy to navigate, but as they approached the narrow end, the winds began to act erratically. Ulezelski planted his feet firmly on the ground and waited for the bad weather to pass, as if though this were nothing more than a distraction that blew his long black hair over his eyes. Once the wind subsided and the misty air had cleared, the two looked on and out at the path ahead of them. It had crumbled with ease under the majestic command of the gods, left to fate on the side of the mountain. Ulezelski threw a rock over the edge, and then he looked into his son's eyes with growing concern. "I'm going to have to lead my horse across this pass. I cannot do it with you riding on his backside. Hug the mountain tightly and make your way out in front. I'll be right behind you, leading our trusted companion across, ready to catch you if you fall." Ulezelski then pulled on the reins and stepped out onto the path, testing it for strength. He then put a hand up against his son's back, arguing to himself in frustration. I know it is a difficult challenge, but you can do this. I have faith in you. Don't look down and make sure each step counts." His father then grunted in an intimidating manner, and so the two started to make their way out inch by inch along the narrow path. The two kept at it until another bad gust of wind slammed up against them. Stefan held on for dear life while his father gripped the reins to put his horse's troubled mind at ease. Stefan had almost made it to the other side when the misty rain returned. The path beneath his feet started to crumble. He tried to secure his grip and keep his footing. He let go just as his father leaned down and grabbed onto his hand. The fear between the two was something they hadn't shared before. He lifted his son up to safety and then led him and his horse the rest of the way out of this difficult pass. Ulezelski continued to walk with a grumble under his breath until the hunter in him sensed something lurking ahead. He looked at his son with a finger pressed against his lips. Stefan backed up while his father plucked an arrow from his backside. He then took a few steps forward, kneeled down, and placed the arrow across the lap of his bow. He didn't pull back. Not just yet, anyways. He held his breath in and waited and bided his time for his prey to lean out of the shadows. After a brief moment of silence, a pair of slanted eyes met his certain cold gaze of death and despair for his enemies. When those vengeful eyes stirred against his own, he realized he knew his prey all too well. He stood up and yelled with vicious behavior at this untrustworthy glance to come out of hiding and quit lurking about. He then kneeled down with his arrow pulled back this time. The tension was high. The moment was now. Friend or foe, he was ready to go in for the kill. A voice out of the shadows then spoke up on his own behalf. "You do not have to point that arrow at my direction. I heard you pull back and prepare to draw upon me with that unrelenting rage you keep hidden deep inside your heart for your enemies. I of all people should know not to go up against the tension you keep on your bow." Ulezelski let out a cold breath of air. "Is that you, Paul? And who hides with you? I can hear the shuffling of someone else's feet as well." "It is I, Paul, and John is at my side. Now lower your guard, and we will lower ours," the voice yelled back sharply. With the voice just as sharp, Ulezelski replied, demanding, "Why should I, and why do you still keep yourself from my view? If I didn't know better, I'd almost swear you had malice intent hiding behind those eyes I caught a glimpse of peeking through the shadows." "Lower your guard, and we shall explain ourselves to you. The actions of a coward, but I suppose I will lower my guard if John promises to take his hand off his steel. I can hear his hand clasp against the handle." "Very well, Ulezelski. John will oblige. Now please, for our sake, release the tension on your bow, and we shall come out of the shadows." Ulezelski released the tension on his bow, but he kept an arrow strung across the lap. John and Paul then climbed onto their horses and rode out of the shadows, heeding a strange warning to go no further into his own lands. "Now that the two of you have made a wise decision to face me with a more nobler side, tell me, why were the two of you lurking about? It isn't wise to hide behind a fading sun that looms on the other side of your opponent." Paul grew a stern face filled with a snide sense in his reply. "We are leaving your lands and never returning. The sun you speak of, it is not the same one that rose over your kingdom in the morning when you and your son left on that hunting trip. What is this astrological bizarreness that you speak of so harshly to me? Though you may not believe it, a unicorn wanders your green pastures, wreaking havoc on time itself. John and I are all that escaped the strange nature of this unnatural abomination of God that fell from the sky." Ulezelski put a foot forward in his defense to gain another inch. "I have just returned to my kingdom. This is no way to greet me. I find your tone with me to be lacking of any reasonable sense. You must be joking. Who put you up to this ruse? Now tell me at once, or my brutish side I will show you." He then pulled the air in around him and let it out strongly through his flaring nostrils. It is no ruse, and you are no longer our king. If my word isn't good enough, then so be it. I will not stay by your side. This madness created by a witch's tongue is something I want no part in. You and your son are on your own from here on out. Ulezelski raised his uneven brow, lit by the fiery wrath of strong feelings oiled in suspicion. This is absurd. The two of you have always remained close by my side. Explain yourselves and the cowardly actions that you have exhibited in front of me and my son. That may be so. We have always stayed by your side, but today we ride with your enemy. What about our many years of friendship? Tell me that means nothing to you. Ulezelski sneered back with the persuasion of his uneven brow. As far as long-standing friendship is concerned, I'll offer you a bit of advice. Advice? Ha! I spit on your advice. He spits on it. Okay. Then spit on this, dear old friend. Your wife and your daughter, along with your people, are all probably dead. Turn back now while you still can. Once you come upon your kingdom, you may end up being trapped there forever. Well, I am your king. You can't treat me like this. For your talk of treason, I should have the both of you hanged. I will always raise the sword against those who stand in your way, but not against something that may very well eat away at my soul and damn me forever to the nether regions of hell. That is something you will have to find out for yourself, if you choose to tempt fate and witness this madness with your own eyes. Ah, Paul, I have a good mind to take you over my knee. Step aside. I want no more qualms with you. Let me and my son pass. Do what you like. I could care less what you think. Now, if you'll kindly step aside, so I do not have to raise my steel, because with your enemy we now ride. Ulezelski put his foot forward another inch with the best of intentions. What about you, John? You've always been there for me in my most triumphant time of need. Do you talk with a treasonous tongue as well? Does Paul here speak on your behalf, or do you have a mind of your own? John curled his lips together in his reply. I'm afraid so, Ulezelski. Quite honestly, I want nothing to do with you anymore. Paul wanted to slit your throat before we met up, but I talked him out of it. Turn back now and spare yourself. Ulezelski tilted his uneven brow in decisive anger. Fine. Leave my dominion. The both of you are no longer welcome to ride upon my green lands. I'll spare your lives, for we have quite the history together. But this talk of ending my life, that I will not let slide. This is what I can offer then. I will tell you what I know to have tainted the air, so that at least you know what you must face, if you choose to ride on. All that is left of your kingdom is pickpockets and thieves. They reside just on the other side of the rainbow. Half your kingdom has succumbed to this witch's spell that has wrought fast all you once knew as reality. You talk of reality to me with this absurd fairy tale you have concocted to conceal your real intentions? You'll have to see it for yourself to believe any of it. The lands have been taken over by the devil himself and his strange mythical horse. If we happen to cross paths in the future, do not wave a friendly hello. Just keep walking, or we will slit your throat and let your son watch as you bleed out and die. Ulezelski growled and scoffed at John like a wild animal, demanding to know if this was his final decision to side with Paul, to which John immediately backed up his horse in response to Ulezelski's brutish and lengthy measure. We want nothing to do with you or this cursed place that you have condemned us to. Now step aside or get knocked off the face of this mountain. Ulezelski ran his hand through the thistles on the end of his chin. The two had always remained close by his side, as far back as he could remember. Their callous, rude words were something of great suspicion, but he just couldn't believe they'd heed a strange warning to him and then threaten to ride with his enemy. So he lowered his hand in a pleading manner. Paul, John, please, I now beg of you to reconsider your harshly spoken words with me. Think this through before you so rudely write me off. With a look of regret, Paul's face grew still. He somberly replied one last time on his own behalf. We have thought it through. If you are wise, you will ride with us. We will accompany you as far as the next kingdom over to ensure safe passage there. though they do not care for your table manners. But after that, we ride with your enemy. What has gotten into the two of you? Is not the enemy of my enemy your enemy too? I would love to sit here on my horse all day and catch up on old times, but I don't want to be caught out in the open when the rainbow stretches across the last of your lands. A dark fate has befallen upon all who are caught within its deadly grasp. John then snidely said what was really on their minds. Either step aside or find out how true our treasonous tongues are that now speak ill of you. Ulezelski lowered his uneven brow, and then he cautiously placed an arrow back across the lap of his bow. Very well, so what happens next? As John and Paul put their hands to their sides, ready to draw upon their swords and do fierce battle. Ulezelski looked them both square in the eyes in his final response. You will regret this, Paul. John, the day you cross paths with me. Choose your next actions wisely. John immediately drew his sword, to which Ulezelski promptly met his actions by slinging an arrow through the belly of his throat. John dropped to the ground, gagging and gasping for air as Paul came at him. Ulezelski already had an arrow pulled from his backside, but before he could draw upon that bow, Stefan slung an arrow into his side. Paul jumped off his horse and came at Ulezelski with a blind wild rage as he slashed and swung at the air. Ulezelski used this to his advantage and was able to get behind him and put him in a chokehold. Paul quickly gave in to his whims. Ulezelski laid his good friend of many years on the ground, gently. Paul, why were you and John lurking in the shadows, hiding behind lies and trickery of great deceit? Please, at least explain your actions to me before you pass into the light. Paul struggled to speak on his own behalf, but eventually the words came out with a strong grip placed just right on the back of his neck. Paul moaned, sputtering incoherently in red-stained gurgles. O Ulezelski, your son, he will never live up to your name. He doesn't carry the same dark heart as you do when it comes to drawing upon the sling of that bow. I saw it in his eyes before he sliced an arrow through my side. I'm sorry, but it is true. Paul, quit babbling. Do not struggle to go yonder into thy gentle good night. Rather embrace my strong grip and tell me what I want to know. Damn it. I am the one who has to live with this for the rest of my life, not you. Your instincts were never wrong, Ulezelski, but aren't you the least bit concerned about your son? He is witnessing this brutal act of revenge. He must live with this as well until the day he dies. What on earth are you talking about? You were the one who drew upon your sword, not I. He is only witnessing the justifiable actions of what I had to do to survive. Now that I am facing death, it was a foolish thought to think you had anything to do with it. You just don't understand quite yet what happened a week ago, the day you and your son left on that hunting trip. Well, make some sense out of the last few words you have left to speak, or I shall make a point out of you in front of my son, regardless of our many years of friendship. Ulezelski, I don't believe I can make sense out of any of it. You'll just have to see for yourself to believe what John and I have said to you is the truth. If you are wise, you will turn back while you still can. If you value your life, your son's life, he's all you have left now. I know you'd like to know more, but I'm afraid the answers I cannot give you that you seek lie somewhere over the rainbow. Paul then died in Ulezelski's arms, a deep regret for reasons unknown to him. He'd just have to find out for himself later on in life. Ulezelski stood up, and with an angry and stern breath of air clenching his throat, he pushed his two old friends of many years off the face of the mountain. He then turned to his son with a hasty grumble. The next time you draw upon the sling of a bow, make sure to go straight for the throat. Do not let your prey suffer. End its life swiftly, so that it does not struggle to go into the light. I know you were only trying to help, but if you wish to follow in my footsteps someday, then you must. He then pushed his uneven brow together and threw his emotions at his son. Never mind, I can't teach you what my father and my grandfather taught me, simply by leading you around on my horse. Perhaps it is for the best. I just thought maybe I could have eased you into life, but now I see that I was wrong. The next time you and I go on a hunting trip, a stick and a stone is all that you'll get from me. Maybe after you learn how to fend for yourself in the woods, you'll understand what I'm trying to get across to you. Now give that old horse of mine a good kick. one that will persuade him. The next time we walk down this path, I'll expect you to walk it back alone." Ulezelski grabbed a hold of the reins and pulled his horse along, with the knot in his knee left over from the scuffle. The last few hours of the sun were dwindling away, with all hope that his lands had not succumbed to some sort of evil spell casted by a witch's tongue, residing just beyond the rolling hills, grazing in the lush green pastures of his kingdom. Still, he rode on confident that whatever fuss John and Paul made up would be dealt with before the sun faded, or at best by the time the stars and moon took its place. Though at the time his worst fear was that his son wouldn't grow up and be able to fend for himself if he did not do something about it soon.